Hello and welcome back to another tutorial. This time, as you can see, I've made some changes off screen. I've changed the naming of the component to semantically match what we're trying to achieve in creating a quiz. This is no easy feat because Angular CLI doesn't actually have a utility for renaming components. So everywhere that we used to have info card, you have to rename quiz card, and everything that was using quiz card, like quiz card component, also has to be renamed. So this goes all the way through all the program, including the selector here, which now is app quiz card instead of app info card, meaning that wherever it's used, such as in the app component HTML, you have to rename it there as well. If we actually go there now, you can see app quiz card has been changed. I've also changed some things to semantically match more appropriately, such as prompt instead of title. And the other things that I've done is I've added some CSS for the button, which I'll show really quickly right here. It's under styles.css. This is ripped directly from W3 Schools. You can Google this yourselves, or you can just use what I have up on screen right now. And I've also added a margin of 15px to the cards themselves so that there is the shadow doesn't go over the border here. I can show this right here. It's right here, the style for the button. We've left the margin over here of 15px so that you can still see the color of the background bleeding over the edge of it so that it doesn't look a little wonky there. Okay, now with that out of the way, what I want to do today is I want to pay close attention to our quiz card component over here and try and find a better way of doing what we've been doing so far. So far what we're doing is every time we create a component, we have the opportunity to pass it three separate inputs. One for a prompt, one for an answer, and one for a background color. But wouldn't it be easier if we could just pass it an object that had all of these properties, and then we could initialize the properties of this component given whatever that object has? So we can actually do this. And one of the things that I'm going to show you today is this idea of interfaces in TypeScript. Essentially, what we can do is we can create our own type. So instead of having something be string or having something be Boolean, what we can do is we can create our own custom type called question. And this question could contain many attributes of differing types. In our case, we'd be taking all of these inputs and we'd be putting them in that object. So we'd only need to send one object anytime we wanted to create a new component. Without talking about it any further, let's actually get into it so you can see what I'm talking about. What we can do is we can go under our app directory over here and we'll create a new file. This file should be called question, given that that's the name of the type that we want to create. And it has to have an extension of TS. Now, what we can do is we can export an interface and open curly braces and we'll name it question. Every question has those same properties that we were working with before. So every question is going to have a prompt, which is going to be of type string. Every question is going to have an answer, which is also a type string. Every question is going to have a background color, which is also of type string. Along with these attributes, later on we're going to have to use IDs so that we can refer to a question within a collection that we want to remove, or we can refer to a new one that we want to add. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to say ID, we'll make this optional, and this is going to be a number. To begin with, what we could do here is we could use this new interface to be able to create a collection of questions. And it's going to be really easy for us to be able to take this collection of questions and then iterate over it using Angular's directives. So in our next step, what we should do is we should create a new file that we're actually going to be reading from, a file that would contain all of these questions. What we can do is we can call it mock questions for now. And this will also be a TypeScript file because we're going to want to use the type that we just created. So over here, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import the questions that we just made. So this type is going to help us make sure that whatever collection we have is only going to be of this specific type. Now we want to actually create that collection. So let's export a collection called questions, and this is going to be of type question, and there's going to be an array of these. Okay, let's make this. Okay. All right. Now I have a few questions here already so that we can just copy and paste these for the sake of time. And as you can see, they each have an ID, a prompt, an answer, and a background color. If they wouldn't have one of these that is required by the type, then it would end up complaining. All right. So now that we've got this hard type collection of questions, what we can do instead of using an input, a triple input here, what we could do is we could bind a property to what we would be receiving from that collection. We're going to create a property called question. This is going to be what we receive when we iterate over the collection of questions. And this is also going to be of the same type that we have created the collection of. So it's going to be a question, which we have to import the type that we just made. All right, great. Let's say there is no default question. We'll just give that a bang for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new lifecycle hook, and we're going to implement what we call an onInit hook, which we should do like that. Implements onInit, like that, which we import from ngFor. Right here, we can actually just implement the interface, and it's going to generate our onInit function. Okay, let's clean this up a little bit. Let's have question. Let's have question and display closer together. Okay, so now you can see these are the inputs, these are the properties, and this is our new ngOnInit lifecycle hook. What lifecycle hooks are is a way to be able to tap into the various parts of a component's life, such as the beginning or after things are initialized, and be able to do something at that point in time with what we have available to us. In our case here, we have this new error. Nothing has been implemented, but we don't actually want this. So we'll just erase that really quickly. What we want to do is if we have a question property that has some kind of a value, because by default it can be null. So let's actually remove that and make this more official right there. Let's say this could be null, or rather undefined. And over here we can say if question. This essentially is saying if, all right, this question. This essentially is saying if there is a property, if there's a value to the property question, then we should go into this block of code. What we do in this block of code is if there is a question, we want to be able to take the properties of the question and we want to make our personal properties that are matching the same. So what we can do is we can say this dot prompt would be the same as this dot question dot prompt. We could do this for everything that we have currently. So this dot prompt equals this dot answer, or rather this dot question dot answer. And we'll just go through the whole. Right, this would be BG color. This would be answer, and this would be. Okay, and we save this up. All right, brilliant. So what you saw before is me saving that error, so it wouldn't actually render what we want to render, but now we have back what we had before. The only difference is now, if we have something in this question, it's going to go through this initializing block of code, and it's going to be able to automatically take all of those attributes from the question object and put them into our attributes that correlate with them, like prompt, answer, and background color. This helps a lot whenever we are iterating through a collection. I'm going to show you right now how we're going to do that. We're going to create another component that we're going to call quiz. And quiz is going to use an Angular directive called ngFor, and that is going to loop over every question in the quiz that we created in mock questions. Okay, so let's stop our server really quickly and let's create a new component, ngg component. We're going to put it under the components directory and we're going to call it quiz. So this is the component that aggregates all of the questions that we've got, all the quiz cards, and it's going to display it. Oh, I named it components, not components. Okay. Well, we can delete that. All right, well, now we can name it components/quiz. And that is going to put it where it should be, under components. And now we have quiz and quiz card. Okay, great, fantastic. All right, now let's go to quizComponent.ts right here. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a property on quizComponent that is essentially just going to be the collection that we have been using. So we're going to create a quiz property, and it's going to be of type questions array, and this is going to have to be imported. Oop. And this is going to be equivalent to questions from our source app mock questions. Okay, well, now that we have that, we don't actually have to specify the type. So let's save that up. So now we have a quiz that is basically holding everything that we have in that JSON file that we were looking at before. So technically, we don't actually need this import statement any longer for the time being, because we already know that it is going to be of an array of type questions, given that that is specified in the other document. And what we can do now is we can go to the app component and we can actually embed the quiz there so that we can start seeing what it is that we're working with. We're just going to embed it right here at the bottom, although it should be app-quiz, as that is the convention for these kinds of things. Okay. Now, if we start the server up again by using npm run start, we should be able to just see whatever is in the HTML, which should just be quizworks. Okay, so now what we can do is we can use a new directive that we've got over here. It's called the ngFor directive. So just like our conditional directive ngIf, it has a longer template form, but what we can do is we can just use a star and we can say ngFor like that. Now this normally has to be attached to some embed. So what we're going to do is we're going to embed a new quiz card right here, an app quiz card. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use that ngFor loop that I was just talking about, and we're going to say let question of quiz. And what this syntax here does is it's basically saying we're going to iterate through the entirety of the quiz attribute that you have in your .ts right here, this quiz. And as we're iterating, we're going to be creating as many app quiz cards as is necessary to be able to cover all of the questions within the quiz. Now, it's up to you what you do with it over here. And what we want to do is we want to be able to bind the question property that we have in our app quiz card to whatever the question value out of quiz is. Meaning that would just be question as well. But to make this a little bit clearer, let's say quiz question, just for the time being, just let you understand the separations between the attribute that we're binding in app quiz card and the value that we're getting from the for loop. Okay, so as I save this, okay, so what might have happened here is that we might have forgotten to specify that this question should actually be an input property that is passed into our quiz card. So now, as you can see, all of the things that are pertaining to quiz, they come from the collection that we created, and these are the values from that collection, along with their answers and their background colors. So now that we've got this to work as it pertains to reading from a static collection of objects, what we need to do next is we need to create a server or a mock server and use our HTTP client that Angular comes with to make requests to be able to fetch data from that server, to be able to add new questions to the existing question dataset, and to be able to remove them if we want to. We'll take this step by step in the next tutorial videos. Thanks for watching.